Ringo Starr, often dubbed the funny Beatle, the one always cracking jokes while John and Paul took center stage, turns 84 this year. But beneath that infectious smile was a man who fought a quiet war with his own demons, binge drinking, drug-induced rages, and even abandoning his own children. And in a shocking twist, Ringo nearly lost his life twice, grappling with hidden health crises and a transformative rehab journey that few ever knew about. Born Richard Starkey on July 7, 1940, in Liverpool's gritty Dingle district, Ringo's early life was marked by hardship. His father walked out when he was only 3, leaving his mother, Elsie, to raise him single-handedly. Despite juggling multiple jobs, Elsie couldn't shield Ringo from the physical challenges he would face. From a young age, his life was a fight for survival. At just 6 years old, Ringo underwent a life-threatening appendectomy that left him bedridden for a year in a children's hospital. Then, at 13, tuberculosis forced him into a sanatorium for a grueling 2-year stay. Yet it was during this time, isolated and weak, that something profound happened. A hospital music session sparked a fire in him. Ringo picked up a percussion instrument, and a lifelong passion for drumming was born. By the time he was 15, Ringo had abandoned formal education with no qualifications to his name. Instead, he bounced from job to job, even working for British Rail. But nothing seemed to ignite his passion until 1957, when he formed the Eddie Clayton Skiffle Group. Skiffle, a unique mix of folk, blues, and jazz, became Ringo's first big musical breakthrough, setting him on a course that would change his life forever. Ringo's ingenuity shone through early on. He didn't start with drums. He tapped a thimble on a washboard to create rhythm. The Eddie Clayton Skiffle Group played local gigs, building a solid fan base with hits like Rock Island Line and Walking Cane. They even performed at the iconic Cavern Club, marking Ringo's debut there on July 31, 1957. But then, everything shifted. It was Christmas when Ringo's stepfather gifted him a drum kit. It was a modest set, but it was the key to unlocking the band's full potential. With a real drummer now in place, the group's popularity skyrocketed. But just as quickly as the skiffle craze exploded, it faded. By 1958, rock and roll had taken over, and the skiffle group disbanded. Ringo was left searching for the next big opportunity. In November 1959, fate knocked at Ringo's door. Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, one of Liverpool's top bands, was in need of a drummer. Ringo, eager for his break, joined the band and soon became Ringo Starr, a name that symbolized his love for rings and his affection for country music. Rory Storm gave Ringo his first taste of the spotlight with Star Time, where Ringo took center stage and sang Boys by the Shirelles, showcasing his stage presence. By early 1960, the Hurricanes were performing at Butlins Holiday Camp in Wales, earning $25 a week. In October, they ventured to Hamburg, Germany, where they crossed paths with a band that would change Ringo's life forever, the Beatles. At that time, the Hurricanes were the more popular group, but fate had other plans. It was during this Hamburg residency that Ringo first met John, Paul, and George. When Pete Best couldn't make a show, Ringo stepped in as a temporary fill-in. On October 15, 1960, he even recorded Summertime with the Beatles, marking the first time he played alongside his future bandmates. Even then, his drumming was unmistakable, and his laid-back, easygoing personality made him a perfect fit for the Beatles. As the Beatles' sound evolved, it became increasingly clear that Pete Best's drumming no longer fit their musical direction. By mid-1962, a change was inevitable. On August 15, 1962, John and Paul approached Ringo with an offer, $25 a week, more than he was earning with the Hurricanes. Although loyal to his band, Ringo knew the Beatles were on the brink of something monumental, and the opportunity was too big to ignore. Just 2 days later, Pete was out, and Ringo officially became the Beatles' new drummer. His first show with them took place on August 18, 1962, at Hume Hall in Birkenhead. However, the transition wasn't without its challenges. Pete's fans weren't ready to let go. Chants of "Pete forever, Ringo never" filled the air, and at the Cavern Club, the hostility was palpable. George Harrison even ended up with a black eye, and later, a bus hit him. Despite the harsh backlash, the Beatles stood firm. George and Paul had pushed for Ringo because of his solid drumming, and over time, fans began to appreciate his warmth and rhythmic style. Even Pete Best, in the end, admitted that the decision had been the right one. With Ringo officially in the band, the Beatles were finally complete. As their sound evolved, so did Ringo's role. On Rubber Soul, 1965, his steady rhythms helped anchor the band's shift toward folk rock. His percussion on Norwegian Wood perfectly complemented George Harrison's sitar, creating a fresh sound that pushed the boundaries of rock music. By Revolver, 1966, Ringo's drumming became increasingly experimental, especially on Tomorrow Never Knows, where his hypnotic, swirling patterns contrasted sharply with his earlier, simpler style. Ringo's playful side also emerged on Yellow Submarine, where his whimsical drumming and quirky voice won fans over. By Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, 1967, Ringo had firmly secured his place in the Beatles' identity. His drumming on With a Little Help from My Friends was simple yet perfect, offering a steady foundation for his heartfelt vocal performance. Though Ringo didn't sing much, when he did, it left a lasting impact. Yellow Submarine became an instant classic, crafted specifically for his voice. With a Little Help from My Friends followed, and although Ringo's voice wasn't technically perfect, its authenticity and emotion resonated with listeners, making the song timeless. By the late 1960s, the Beatles had started to unravel. Tension soared as Paul McCartney pushed for structured pop. John Lennon delved deeper into experimental music with Yoko Ono's influence, and George Harrison, long overshadowed, blossomed as a songwriter. Yoko's presence in the studio only added fuel to the fire. In 1968, during the White Album sessions, the pressure finally exploded. Ringo felt increasingly isolated, believing the others had grown closer without him. Frustrated, he quit the band. The Beatles struggled to maintain their chemistry without him, while Ringo found solace in Sardinia, where he began writing Octopus's Garden, a track that would later appear on Abbey Road. Realizing they needed him, the Beatles sent telegrams, calling him the best rock and roll drummer in the world, and even decorated his drum kit with flowers. 2 weeks later, Ringo returned, but the cracks in the band's unity were becoming too obvious to ignore. By September 1969, John Lennon made the decision to leave the Beatles, describing it as a divorce. However, their business manager, Alan Klein, convinced him to keep it quiet until the financial issues were settled. While the world still saw them as the Beatles, behind closed doors, the breakup had already begun. The Beatles' split hit Ringo hard. Always the steady, easygoing one, he had worked tirelessly to keep the peace between John and Paul, but their deteriorating relationship, along with business conflicts, had become too much. By 1970, it was clear the Beatles were finished. For Ringo, this meant proving he could stand on his own. But instead of diving into rock, he stunned everyone with his debut solo album, Sentimental Journey, released on March 27, 1970. Unlike typical rock albums, Sentimental Journey was a collection of classic standards from the 40s and 50s, songs that Ringo had grown up with in Liverpool. Produced by George Martin, the album featured arrangements by musical legends like Quincy Jones. The cover showed Ringo outside a Liverpool pub paying tribute to his roots. Critics were divided. Some found it charming, others perplexing. But it still reached the UK top 10 and number 22 on the US charts. It wasn't a massive hit, but it showed Ringo's willingness to take risks, stepping outside the expected path. Later that year, in October, Ringo took a bold step away from his Beatles roots with Beaucoup of Blues, a full-on country album. Recorded in Nashville in just 2 days with some of the finest musicians in the business, the album was a daring departure from his usual style. While it didn't soar in sales, the title track charted in both the US and Germany, helping to further establish Ringo as an artist unafraid to explore new musical territories. But Ringo's true breakthrough came in 1971 with It Don't Come Easy, co-written with George Harrison. The song became his first major solo hit, cementing his place in the music world. He followed this success with Photograph in 1973 and You're 16 in 1974, both chart toppers. His 1973 album Ringo, which featured contributions from all the Beatles, was a commercial hit and solidified his standing as a successful solo artist. Ringo also ventured into acting, starring in The Magic Christian, 1970, and Caveman, 1981, where he met and eventually married actress Barbara Bach. Yet, despite his career triumphs, Ringo's personal life was in turmoil. His struggles with alcoholism led to the breakdown of his first marriage to Maureen Cox in 1975. To make matters worse, George Harrison's affair with Maureen added another layer of complexity, straining both friendships and marriages. As Ringo's drinking intensified, he became a member of the notorious Hollywood Vampires Drinking Club, a notorious hangout for celebrities. Even after a stint in rehab, Ringo's battle with addiction raged on, but his commitment to sobriety remained. In 1989, he formed the All-Star Band, a rotating supergroup of legendary musicians that became an international success. The band's unique lineup and intimate concerts brought Ringo's message of peace and love to audiences around the world. In 2001, Ringo released Ringo Starr and his All-Star Band, The Anthology, a live album that showcased his drumming, which earned him long overdue recognition. This led to his Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction as a solo artist in 2015. However, not all was smooth sailing. In 2008, comments about Liverpool sparked controversy, and his figure in a Beatles sculpture was decapitated by vandals. Despite the backlash, Ringo refused to apologize. Beyond the public drama, Ringo faced darker personal struggles. His alcoholism shattered relationships, including his marriage to Maureen Cox in 1975, leaving her to raise their children alone in the UK. In the late 90s, Ringo revealed that during his addiction, he physically abused his second wife, Barbara Bach, in a drunken rage. He had no memory of it the next day. This marked a turning point for Ringo. He and Barbara entered rehab together, committing to sobriety and rebuilding both their relationship and his bond with his children. Ringo's struggles were often overshadowed by those of his former bandmates, but his candid confessions serve as a reminder that even the brightest stars face deeply personal battles. In 1979, he came perilously close to death due to a recurrence of peritonitis, which required emergency surgery. It was a near miss, but just 3 weeks later, he attended Eric Clapton's wedding with Paul McCartney and George Harrison, showing the resilience that defined his life. That same year, a devastating fire ravaged Ringo's Hollywood home, destroying priceless Beatles memorabilia. The loss was heartbreaking, but it forced Ringo to take stock of his life. He realized it was time to focus on his health and well-being, leaving behind the reckless lifestyle that had consumed him for so long.